Hey everyone, Matt Woodruff here, and thank you. Senior Systems Engineer, so I actually cover the federal government space for Jamf, and that's the reason why this topic in particularly tends to affect the customers that I tend to go through. Thankfully, I am just the face of just kind of getting this started for all of you because he's the brains, and he gets to go through the depth of the demo itself and all of that. So we're going to go ahead and dig in, and that way we can show you our pretty photo and picture up on the screen. Let's go through the agenda just really quickly as we roam through what's going to be possible in this particular how-to session today. And we have our quick overview. We are going to go run through some of the requirements, especially for all of you to know kind of what the transition has been for the Jamf Infrastructure Manager and what its possibilities exist today, where it should be sitting, and especially OS requirements and network requirements. So we're going to dig through that. What are some of the configurations that we found to be successful as we continue to deploy these particular Gem instances within DMZ settings, other types of internal settings that we have out there? And then the last is our demo, and here's our clicker. So I'm going to start using this. And with that, you'll actually find that we also have some great resources for you to dive into. One of the multiple resources that we have regarding white pages, as well as online resources that we have on the jamf.com and Jamf Nation websites. And then we're going to actually clean it up at the end with some Q&A. And you'll find on both ends of the stages, we have mics. As you are probably aware of by now, we'll probably have a pretty good set amount of time for you guys to come up and ask us questions about best practices and methods for you to utilize Gem, or sorry, as you can tell, I'm already using the acronym. So Jamf Infrastructure Manager internally at Jamf is labeled as the Gem, and so we do reference that as we continue to go through this session today.
You mean the big Gem?
The big Gem. It's a big gym. So with that, the overview. The main functions, I do want to point this out really quickly because there are, and we have embedded two different pieces of technology within our Gem product. One, the LDAP proxy. That is the majority of what this how-to session is going to be about today. And as you start reviewing that possibility, be aware there is a secondary product that's labeled within the Gem moniker, the Gem name, as the healthcare listener. Now, I would highly suggest, and I'm going to place it on the last slide, exactly where to go to learn more about the healthcare listener. We will not be going through that in this how-to session today, so please be aware of that. And if that's what you were planning on seeing in this particular environment in this session today, you guys obviously go ahead and walk out. That's fine. And what I'm not going to be hurt. With that, go ahead and...
I will be.
He's going to stay, I promise. Yeah, definitely can't get through this without you. Now, as far as current versions, these are up to date as the current version shipping. 9.101, and what relates to that is the Gem with the LDAP proxy is the version 1.3.1, and then we do have the healthcare listener that's on a different version mapping, and that's specific to how we have two different product development cycles occurring right now, and who was handling that within Jamf as we started rolling out what this technology is and does. So please be aware that that's how the versioning is mapping out right now, but we are using the same versioning structure that you're finding with our Jamf Pro product today. So it is major, minor, and subsequent smaller incremental security releases and other types of small security bug releases will be the last dot. With that, what are our server requirements for this product? We have, and we did not get this slide updated before. I noticed that. So Ubuntu 14.04 LTS and 16.04 LTS are both, and Rail 7.0, 7.1, 7.2, are all the components of the Linux variants that we have tested internally. This is not to say this is actually requirement. We have had a lot of instances, especially as you guys have solidified what your DMZ components should be, whether it be a Debian version or CentOS or other Linux variants. We are acknowledging that it is possible to place those the Gem product on those particular operating systems. It's just not been tested fully by us. So please be aware of that as you continue down this path. Second, Windows Server. 2008 is actually outdated now. We were building this slide and I was copying and pasting, so my apologies. It is actually 2012 R2 and 2016 that has been tested now for the Gem with the LDAP proxy. I am unaware of what the healthcare listener requirements might be for the OS side, so I hope this is helpful in understanding what our server requirements are today.
If you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Another requirement we forgot, Java.
Java, that is correct.
JDK 8.
Yeah, so this is a great reference that we're going to show you at the end of the slide. And what he's stating to you is correct in the aspect that there are some technical requirements of this product as far as Java and some additional components that you might need for this environment to work correctly. And all of that is going to be in our link at the very end of this to give you guidance on what Jamf Nation is telling you as far as additional component requirements like Java.
Yep.
Now, from a networking component, this is where I'll get to speak a little bit, and then we'll start transitioning into Laurent. And the internet side of this, we are positioning that the Jamf Cloud, as you have heard, obviously, through our keynotes and other types of sessions you're going to, we're starting to development cycles to be Jamf Cloud first, and then on-prem solutions will be a secondary scope of where our requirements are going. So with this and these diagrams, Jamf Cloud will be the internet portion of this because of the reason you might start implementing an LDAP proxy in your environment. You don't want, and this is obviously where a majority of you have given us that feedback, where you do not want to expose your AD directly to the internet. In fact, you guys should know this, we are not even highly suggesting or even close to suggesting that you put your AD on an externally facing type of network connection. So as you start positioning an LDAP proxy to be placed inside of your DMZ section, these are where this network requirements document should lay out where it's going to be successful. The internet component, Jamf Cloud, having inbound access into your DMZ across any port above 1024. We have labeled 8636 just for the understanding that a lot of people use that as the high port for LDAP-S communication. So that is a possibility for inbound traffic. It is suggested. It's something that's kind of like default during our installation, that that's the port that might be utilized for inbound traffic. Now, what's interesting about the installation process, and actually something you'll see as Laurent goes through the demo portion of it, is that the installation does call out across HTTPS to the Jamf Cloud infrastructure so that it can determine what are the LDAP server settings that I need to obtain. So there is a two-way communication occurring across that type of connection. Obviously, a great reason why it should exist in the DMZ, possibly not on the internal network itself. So that is our suggestion and request as you start to review this for installation. The next piece is internal between your DMZ and your internal network, a 636 or LDAP-S communication directly to your LDAP or AD environment. Actually, I take that back. AD only. We do not support LDAP. Is that correct?
No, we do.
We do. OK. So LDAP and AD communication across 636, please, to your internal network. Now, on the next slide, we dive in even deeper, and this is where Laurent's going to take over with talking about how we've actually identified some initial concerns that people were having in regards to having a DNS entry that might not be resolvable on the external net and internal net based upon how you're doing natting. So he's going to talk through what we have found to be successful and what actually he's done as being successful. So, Laurent? There you go, buddy.
Thank you, sir. Just going to go quick second before, just to mention that in this is the, I would say, the standard example of a deployment of GIM or Jamf Infrastructure Manager. Forget my GIM. Where the GIM server is using a public IP from your DMZ. Correct. And then can access the internal server, whether it's on a public or not IP. I put an example of a public IP, but could be an internal. But most of the time, your DMZ is behind a security appliance, whatever it is, that does network address translation. You don't want to expose the GIM server using one of your public IPs because A, you might not have enough, or B, you don't want to. And this is where, if we take the way GIM is set up, that can be a big failure. And that's the usual cause of failure that I see when people try to set up GIM behind NAT, because GIM won't start. So the trick here is that we have our Jamf server, Jamf Pro Server. Again, we said Jamf Cloud could be anywhere else. Talking to GIM through the NAT, and when you configure GIM, it will ask you, what is my name? What is GIM's name? And it says IP also. Never use that. I'll show you later during the setup, but never use an IP. Always a name. And the trick is to make sure that Jamf Cloud will connect to your public IP using that name, so it has to resolve externally jim.company.com public IP. And also, we have to let GIM server think that it's also its name, but with a different IP. There are two methods you can use for that. Either you have a split DNS or split horizon DNS, as Oliver likes to call them, where externally it resolves to the public IP, and internally the server will ask, what is my name? And will say the same name. The other option that I've used a lot of time is just use an host file. And in your host file, you just say jim.company.com is the private IP, yep. Thank you, internal IP of the server. And then we'll communicate again to the AD server. Once again, stress, as Matt said, H636 is just an example. Can be anything you want, but it has to be the same port that is translated. You can't redo another translation.
Now, can you clarify one piece of this? As you continue to look at this diagram, some instances might review this as two different installations of the GIM. Is that what you're representing here?
No, not at all. The GIM server is, do we have a, no pointer. The GIM server is the one on the left. On the right, sorry, my bad. I always mix my left and my right. So the one with the 172.16.0.10 is the GIM server. The first one is your security appliance doing the translation, whether it's your firewall, load balancer, whatever you want. And now let's have a quick look at the setup of GIM. I used Ubuntu for that because we have a nice graphical interface for Ubuntu. Who doesn't like this color? And it's corporate. First question you're going to be asked is, what is the address of your Jamf Pro Server, or GSS? You have to put the complete address, including the HTTPS. If you need to use a specific port, do not forget to mention it. That's why the example is the 8443. That is the classic one. As I'm using Jamf Cloud, it's a standard 443. I don't have to mention it. Then second question, which account is GIM going to use to connect to your Jamf Pro Server, to authenticate against it, to make some small modifications? I highly recommend to have a dedicated account for that. Do not use your main admin account that you use to manage your Jamf Pro Server. If you want to make that such an account, you go to your settings, you create a new user, and it will be a custom user. What does it need? Infrastructure Manager create and update, and LDAP server update. That's all you need. And of course, use a very, very highly secured password like Jamf1234. Is it? What is the standard password we have in documentation? I keep forgetting.
Jamf 1, 2, 3, 4.
Everyone uses that, right? Shit, I have to change my password. Everyone has pictures? I can come back if you want. Then the next question will be, and that's the important part. If you remember my diagram from before, what is the name of the Jamf server that the Jamf Pro server is going to contact? And also, this is used by Jim during the setup to say, oh, on which IP should I listen on the port that is configured? And Jim is going to say, my name is jim.example.com. Let me check in my DNS with my DNS or host file to find what is my IP. And this is, if you remember my diagram slide. If you only set up your external DNS, Jim will find that, oh, I'm called jim.example.com. The IP on which I need to listen is 198, whatever, public IP. I'm going to try to open port 8636 on that IP. Oh, it's failing because I don't own that IP. So that's why you have to fool Jim and say, yeah, in fact, that name is your private IP. And that works. Is that clear? Cool. So behind the scene, ooh, bad slide. Forget the pools for now. Behind the scene, what happens? Jim will connect to your Jamf Pro server, and it does a normal standard computer enrollment. The good news, it's free. You don't have to pay an extra license for that. But it does a standard enrollment, and it's hidden. You don't see it in your inventory, no worries. Then it will grab the CS certs from the Jamf Pro server. Security is behind this. Then it will do a certificate request. Say, can I have a certificate to talk to you again? We'll, of course, get one. And now, Jim is configured, and will start connecting to your Jamf Pro server by default every 30 seconds to say, hey, do you have a configuration for me? I need the rest of my configuration, which port I need to listen to. And the default is 30 seconds. You can make it bigger, but 30 is usually working well. And this is where you're going to do your LDAP configuration on the Jamf Pro server to say, please use Jim, use that port, and once you save it, wait a little before testing it, because we have this 30 seconds window. Then Jim is going to pool the information, so this is not sent, because Jim technically is not listening on any port now. And once this is done, your LDAP queries will go through Jim, because your Jamf Pro server knows where it is and how to contact Jim. Jim will do the second part, will query the LDAP server, gets the answer, transfers to the Jamf Pro server.
So if you don't mind, one of the
Sure.
things that I was trying to understand how this communication works when I started talking to the Jamf software development team was a great way that they wrapped an example around it is when you enroll a Mac OS device into Jamf Pro, there's that agent that gets installed on the Mac OS device. Then there's a lot of communication that occurs between directly the Mac OS device and the Jamf Pro server. So think of the Jim as actually having an agent that's gotten installed, and it needs to go out and start that communication, including certificate requests and acknowledgments, and then it goes out and does a pull of the information down from the Jamf Pro server, kind of the same way our agent works with our Mac OS device. So consider the Jim in the same aspect.
Yeah, it's just a very, it's
simple.
always, yeah, instead of 15 minutes, it's 30 seconds.
Yes, that's correct.
It's an avid agent. It's give me. On the Jamf Pro side, welcome to my French version of Jamf Pro.
We decided to keep it the same because the fields and mappings are in the exact same place as our English version.
Yeah, and I don't speak very good English, so. So this is what you see if you go to Jamf Pro settings and you go to server infrastructure and infrastructure manager. You will see your Jim server and its name, its host name. Of course, the display name is as usual. You can change it, but who cares? And the frequency check every 30 seconds. Then you create your LDAP connection. Can be Active Directory, can be whatever you want behind. The only thing, you can't use one of the presets we have when you create a new LDAP server. you know, for Open Directory, Active Directory, Novel eDirectory, you have to go manual. So be prepared with the manual part, because you will be asked a lot of questions. And the important part is enable LDAP Proxy Server, activate a server proxy LDAP. And you will choose in the menu the name of your infrastructure manager. And this is where you're going to say, and I forgot it. Oh, bad slide. But here you're going to precise which port Jim is going to listen on. 8636 in my example. Again, as Matt mentioned, anything above 1024. So do not feel like you need 8636 or 8389. Can be 5555 if you prefer. And then do the rest of the configuration, save, wait a little, and you can start, if everything goes according to the plan, you can start using your LDAP connection. And it will go through Jim and come back. So I prepared a little video. You will see a little glitch in my video. I had to do a little bit of editing at one point because I made a mistake in my password. I'm going to be honest. Here you go. So I'm connected to my Ubuntu server. I'm checking that I have Java installed 1.8 something. Perfect. I'm going to now edit the host file to let it think that, yeah, your name for your private IP is jim.it42.fr. OK, save that. And then I'm going to install Jim using the deb file that we provide. So sudo dpkg -- install path to the deb file. And here we go, unpacking, and a nice interface. Name of my Jamf Pro Server, lpbeta.jamfcloud.com. Oops, no, Jim, not K. Jim user, then, of course, the password, jamf1234. And then the name of the server itself, jim.it42.fr. And then we wait for the end of the setup. There you go. And then we can move to the Jamf Pro Server. Well, I'm going to go and check that Jim is really set up. Yes, here it is. Welcome, Jim. And you get a bit more information from this. Now I'm going to set up my LDAP connection. And as I said, you create a new one. You go configure manually. Next. Now you're going to see me typing crazy information about an Active Directory connection. I did a standard and simple setup. I did not go through all the mappings, don't worry. But here, select my Jim server. Do not forget the port, 8636. We could use SSL. I did not use it because I wanted to save time. And then I connect with my service account to my Active Directory. You can see that my Active Directory is a complete different name than my domain name. It's an internal one. It's not accessible from outside.
Just use the suggested.
Sorry?
Just use the suggested. That'll work.
Yeah. I should have tried.
So one of the things to understand about this particular setup is when you're going through the LDAP server component, there's two different ports that's indicated. Please understand that when you're entering the LDAP server entry, that the port mapping to its immediate right is giving you the indication of what's going to be communicated between the Jim and your internal LDAP server. So that's the right port to be utilizing between those two connections, as you've seen in the diagrams before. Oh, you really went through all the mappings and everything.
Yeah, almost.
Nice.
Well, I needed something to search.
He totally finished this video last night, by the way. So
don't look at the time. And look, you're here.
I don't know why. Cool. So some of the questions that we do get asked constantly is, where do I go and get this? If you are a Jamf customer, you'll find it when you go to the Jamf Nation and you have access to the assets for your particular organization. Please find this within the My Assets category of Jamf Nation. It is a free download. As long as you're a Jamf customer, you can download this. And we do not limit how many times you download this or how often you use this or how many times you install this across multiple different instances or DMZ sections that you might have network-wise. So please do not be concerned about that from a licensing standpoint.
Sure.
The second piece is understanding that how many attempted to use the NetSUS LP appliance? Anybody? I can hardly, okay. So I have a few people. So we basically distributed that as an open source selection from some very talented people within Jamf. But as we found, that particular interest continued to grow, and that's where we came out with a fully supported product. So please understand, Jamf support knows how to handle this particular product. So please contact your, wow, I was about to say Jamf buddy. Please contact your Jamf support team, and they'll be able to assist you with this. And I put up on here what the full description and title is for the session that's happening tomorrow morning concerning the healthcare listener, so that all of you can be aware of that.
One thing I'd like to add, you mentioned that you can install as many GIM as you want. You need one per LDAP connection you create in your Jamf Pro Server. You can't use the same GIM for multiple LDAP connections.
So that brings up one last question before we actually get into Q&A time for you guys. I know it was very quick, 3:12. And with that, how many, I would like to just get a feel for how it's going, because I am also working heavily on getting SAML authentication built out even more as we continue to review. SAML version 2 is currently implemented, but it's only for authentication and not authorization, and we're starting to review SAML version 3. How many have started reviewing SSO with some type of SAML provider and identity provider? Okay. Quite a number of you. Like Okta, Ping, ADFS, all those, yeah. So all of those are now kind of where progression is going. So just be aware that Jamf is kind of getting a pulse as we continue this, like the conditional access partnership that we have with Microsoft, and monitoring how ADFS is constantly being used for Azure services. That's just one topic that's so prevalent in our community that we're also trying to keep a pulse as they built out a new relationship with Ping identity, for example. And Okta is a very strong one as well, and we use Okta internally. So we have a strong stake in making sure that SAML authentication continues to grow. And as we do that, we're going to try to tie together both the authentication and authorization components of the authentication strategy within Jamf Pro. But that's the reason why I got heavily involved with this project, was because a lot of SAML authentication providers and identity providers were getting ramped up, and they needed some type of connection back into their AD, and they didn't want to expose it internally. So that's where the LDAP proxy came into play for a lot of my customers. So with that, is there anything else I'm missing?
Nope.
All right, great. So we're going to go ahead and do Q&A. We have both the mics on both ends. If you guys have any questions, please hop on up and ask them. Yes, sir.
More of a comment, I guess, than anything, and it kind of builds off of what you said. It took me like 6 months to get the LDAP proxy approved through all of our committees and red tape and everything else.
Yes.
And I'm still having a hard time getting it up into the DMZ and ports opened and everything else.
Yep.
It's like a horrible process where I'm at. And every single time, it seems like I'm having to repeat myself over and over and over again. I've got to answer the question of, they can't just tie into Okta. We've got all that data in Okta. So, you know, it's a big deal where I'm at, and
Yep.
it would probably have been a single afternoon to solve this problem instead of better part of a year.
Agreed.
So,
Are you in the regulated industry by chance?
not overly so.
Okay. So that's one of the concerns that we're starting to get over and over again was trying to build the authorization portion of Okta and other SSOs into our product. So we're very well aware of that, and we've heard that from product review, and it is on our roadmap.
All right, perfect. Thanks.
Yep, thank you. Yes, sir.
Could you talk a little bit about how this works with Jamf Cloud?
Yes. So this entire process, if you saw the network architectural review, the first component is that's kind of where this came from, was to build this out so that it solely works with Jamf Cloud first. So the LDAP proxy will proxy that communication down from Jamf Cloud so that that communication stays internal on your network. Is that what you were asking? Okay, great. Yes, sir.
Hey, how you doing? Just wondering if there are plans for multiple LDAP lookups through one GIM, or if I'll have to continue to build out a GIM instance for every LDAP connection.
Not that I know.
So currently I have to run, I have 14 various domains, and I have to run 14 instances of this to do that.
Is it one forest with multiple domains, or is it?
Yes.
Okay. Are they under one tree?
No.
Yep.
I would say that we haven't approached that yet. Yeah. Have you seen any feature requests on it yet?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I will upvote it for you.
Yeah.
And I'll make sure and
Same.
yeah, we'll continue working on that. Thank you for the request. Over here.
Are you guys going to be around after the session just for a little, like, I need
Yes.
a little help with
No problem.
detail about tricking the natting.
Yep,
Like, I
no
think-
problem. I'll be
okay.
in that room or just outside with a coffee.
All right, I think
Usually
that
you
was
can
my
find me with a
issue.
coffee. It's easy.
If, like, our JSS could see the infrastructure manager just fine, and we tried opening up all ports, but I never could get it to query. Do you think it was something?
Probably,
like-
maybe your gym is behind that, right?
Yeah, that's what I think it.
Yeah,
the
probably
issue
what
is.
I mentioned, the
And
name
I didn't
thing.
catch all of it, but I'll get.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Come back to me, and I will redo it for you. No worries.
But yes, we're sticking around. Uh-oh.
No, not that guy.
And I'm back over here.
Hi,
Sorry,
thanks-
this is Jamf PS.
Yeah.
I don't know why he's up here.
Long-time listener, first-time caller. Thanks for taking me. Installing the gem and getting it to register in Jamf Pro, usually fairly straightforward. Troubleshooting the connection from gem to the domain controller and getting the mappings correct and making sure they can talk. Do you have any best practices or advice on how to make the route from gem to the LDAP server more reliable, or tricks you've gotten there?
Like any directory services, you have to make sure. What I usually do when I come to a directory service, I don't really know. I try to make a direct connections from an internal machine that can access it with an LDAP browser. I usually like Apache Directory Studio for that, but it can be any LDAP browser. And then once you have this access, you usually have the correct information. Then you have to make sure that the Gym server can talk to your LDAP, to your directory service. And I start with telnet and NC just to make sure that we have the correct ports open. But if it's really a mapping configuration, have an LDAP browser ready that can access your directory service and inspect it. Usually the best thing it can do.
So I'm an on-prem customer, and I have a couple of servers in the DMZ. And first of all, I want to find out if there's any benefit of incorporating this for my DMZ servers, and if so, are there any design changes based on what you have from the cloud there?
Depends. If your security really doesn't want to have direct communication between your JSS or Jamf Pro server and your directory service, but still, the gym will still need to talk to your directory service. If you put them both in DMZ, it's basically like, I wouldn't see a big benefit.
Okay.
You could do it technically, but I wouldn't see a huge benefit.
Do you currently have the Jamf Pro server communicating directly to AD?
That's correct.
Okay. I would say from a security perspective, not much, because of the type of connection that you have already initiating from the Jamf Pro server inbound, and all that query is doing is such a small packet and not a lot of data within it, and you're keeping it internal on your network anyways. So I wouldn't see from a security perspective any advantages for implementing the gem within your DMZ setup. Not to say that we don't have customers actually doing that.
Right.
They actually do complete that, even with some advanced like limited access type of setup of the Jamf Pro Server. And so having that in your environment might not be advantageous.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yep. Yes, sir.
As a follow-up to Doug's question.
Yeah. Hopefully he left. Oh, no, he's still here.
Does the JSS or the gem keep, pardon me, the Jamf Pro Server, sorry, Doug. Does the Jamf Pro Server or the gem keep a running log of queries and responses in any way, shape, or form? Okay.
No, it's just passing through.
Okay.
It doesn't keep anything.
I've got a lot of security customers that want to know where that traffic is and what's being passed.
Basically, if you want the way if you're using, for example, LDAP-S, we're just sending through 8636 the query. Jim doesn't even look at it, sends it to the Active Directory server, whatever directory service you have, gets the answer, passes the answer as the Jamf Pro Server that will handle it.
Okay.
Yeah. That actually brings up a good question. Like, what data is on the gem that they need to be aware of, like log entries or anything else?
A few logs, not even any name or passwords.
Yep.
There's just a few config files that contains basic information where exactly is your directory service, but that's it. There's no name, there's no password stored on Gem.
Does it keep a log of
it keeps a
what's
log
happening
of
to the service?
of its connection to the Jamf Pro Server.
Okay.
But not a log of the queries.
Very good. I think that's it.
All right. Thanks so much for coming, and both of you for answering questions and sticking around later for a couple specifics. Sure. At 4 o'clock, we've got our last session of the day on building extension attributes here, so I hope to see you back. Thanks.